name is David Metzger. This is Vermont Film Essentials.
I'm Devon Ewalt.
And with us again, special guest, Tim Bridge.
Hey, I'm Tim Bridge.
Back to join us. He's got notes this time.
I got notes this time.
Warms my heart.
Breaking out the notebook.
So this is third Hitchcock film, right? Or second Hitchcock?
The second Hitchcock film.
So,
Third time on
What was
here.
the prior one?
Rear Window.
I did,
cool.
Rear Window
Cool.
on this.
So Hitchcock is a big director for both of us.
Yeah.
And you said that Psycho is your favorite.
Psycho's my favorite. Psycho's
So-
my favorite Hitchcock.
Why?
I think it's just everything. It's from every perspective of Hitchcock. It's just like got everything that he was as a filmmaker, sort of in it. Just the sort of simplicity, and then the brashness, sort of mashing together. It's a good history film when you look at like the history of film and like how he made it and the things he got away with making it and what a phenomenon it was. I don't know. I just think it represents him very well. I could like trade off favorite Hitchcock movies like that because he's got so many great ones, but this one just sort of is so representative of him as a filmmaker, and that's also it's also fun. It's fun as hell. I forgot, I was watching it today and I was like on the edge of my seat.
The mounting of it, like the way it unfolds, scene after scene, is very fun to watch, and the way music is playfully employed, like it really, like the way they enhance and elevate each part.
It's
really
it's
cool.
his most like impressive film, like in total. Like I don't really think of the music in his other movies, but the music in this film is just like.
I read that he didn't want to use music during the shower scene, and that Bernard Herrmann had to like assert it and be like, it just would have been a completely different scene.
Good.
Yeah, thank God that happened.
Yeah, I think he's had such a long and varied career, Hitchcock, when you look back at all of his films, that yes, you could, to say this is one is a favorite over another, you can trade them off, but I feel like especially like filmmakers, when they look back, it's like this film and Vertigo are the two films they kind of hold up.
Yeah.
Because at this point in his career, he is so on top of his game visually. He knows exactly what he wants to do. He's got such a clear vision that with this, he's like, script be damned, everything else be damned. I know exactly what I'm going to do, and here it is.
I think the impressive nature of his kind of catalog is that you could take North by Northwest, Rope, Shadow of a Doubt, Strangers on a Train, certain other movies, and they would be better than a lot of filmmakers' best films. So he has this astounding collection of masterpieces that it's really like hard to find. And Psycho, I think, is just that much taller than the rest that you really can identify it as being this iconic moment.
Well,
in his career.
it's so iconic as a film. I mean,
Yes.
there's just images from it. The shower scene I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit longer later. But like, there's just the markings in this one of everything you're looking for in Hitchcock, and it's about just like a kind of a whacked up crazy dude, which is amazing, and wasn't what we were really seeing in horror cinema at the time. It was very. It was like Dracula and the fantastical almost, and this was very real and very like visceral, and I think that's why it affected so many people.
I think it owes a lot to the novel, and even though there was a lot of departure from it, like I guess it was originally she was going to get beheaded in the shower. It's like, so it's almost like more grisly, but I feel like it's like the courage that Hitchcock was like, you know what, because he didn't have studio backing. He's like, I want to make this film, and I think it can be viable. He changed cinema. He changed the nature of the horror film.
That he basically said, to heck with the studio, I'm going to make it with my TV crew that's making Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Strip it down. It's like a low-budget film.
It is really simple. Like that was one of the things that I was noticing today was there isn't that much extra. Like with Vertigo, there's a lot of like extravagance in that film because there's like a sort of a theme of that. But this is it's just like.
It's like he does whatever's called for.
Yeah,
man.
it's just
he
like
has
very
that
simple
knack.
locations. It's just very simply telling the story. There's textbook examples of him lingering on objects rather than having characters tell you about what's going on, and you can piece it together so easily. What's going on in the film? Like, I noticed the scene where the music first comes in, because it's there's no music in the film. there's music over the main credits, but then as the film starts and we meet Marion and we meet this illicit affair that she's partaking in, there's no music, and then the music comes back in on this one scene where Marion walks in and then the camera moves into the bed and shows the money, then pans up to a suitcase that she is packing, and so it's just like two objects, two very deliberate. Very deliberate and smooth camera move, very simply, and then the music starts, and it's like, okay, well, now this is the creepy, this is when we start to ramp up. It was just everything is put in place perfectly in this movie, and I noticed it a little bit more this time watching it.
And there's so many like little details. Like he almost defies the audience to not care about it, or he sets up this premise that is so unlike anything that he's ever done or any other story that's been. It's basically like a B movie. It's something Sam Fuller would do, right? It's like following this,
but filtered
female
through
character,
his own kind of way to elevate it, though. It's like
And then, like even like I was noticing after the opening title sequence, which is
Saul Bass is
Saul Bass, his visuals. But like that, we get these opening titles that is like it's here we are in Phoenix, Arizona, this day, this time, and it's like a little bit ways where it's like, wait a minute, who the hell cares what day and what time it is? Like that has not like it's just like he's building like this structure so that he can finally just say like none of that mattered in one shot.
It's almost like he developed a sense of experimentation in his films with this and the birds. If you look at it, compared to some of the prior films, which were much more straightforward, they still had dramatic set pieces and these that he's known for, but they didn't quite feel the way those felt. Those feel like B movies.
Right.
It's like there's something about their nature that is very like deceptive in like how he kind of plays with your expectations as a viewer.
Well, that's what's so crazy about this movie is Psycho, the legacy of Psycho. You think about Psycho, you're not like, oh yeah, that movie about that lady who stole all that money. Like they spend so much time building up and having dramatic, tense scenes where you're like, oh, is she gonna get caught? But then ultimately it doesn't matter because that's not what this movie is about. 50 minutes of this movie is dedicated to this storyline, and then it's like, whoa, okay, well she's dead. And we're moving on to something else. We have a new focal point here.
I mean, it's like the okey doke that he does in The Birds, where he lulls you into that sense of, oh, this is going to be this is about them.
Is she going to get away?
And all of a sudden, this bird, he just literally has a bird rip into her head. I mean, in that moment of that false kind of sense of what the film is, and it's very similar here.
It would have been like I feel like audiences today will take it for granted, but being in that theater at that time of having an audience see it and being lulled into this story, and then all of a sudden just having the rug completely flipped underneath them.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's insane. And it's Janet Leigh, who's like big movie star at the time.
God,
she's so good in it, but she's big movie star at the time. They're just like, oh, Janet Leigh's a new Alfred Hitchcock movie, you gotta go see it. And you murder your lead actress 40 minutes into the movie, like the selling point of your movie. That's crazy. That was a crazy idea.
The moment when, in the shower scene, because it's leading up to it, in their conversation there's all these hints that he's psychotic. It's in the dialogue. You can hear it, there's little references, there's things that he doesn't say, and it's all there.
It's the best scene in the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then the moment when you sense Norman's presence in the bathroom and you can faintly see it behind the curtain moving towards you, pretty much, because you're right there with her, is the most frightening moment in film history for me that I've ever experienced. And I will always remember when I saw it as a kid with my dad. And I probably shouldn't have seen it as a kid, but you know what? It left an impression on me, and I'll always remember that.
Yeah.
As well as the look on Norman's face at the end when he comes in. When you realize, and the full reveal, but it's like that's just brilliant use of space and color and light, and not color but shade. I mean, the darkness moving on the white curtain. It's just he can be so symbolic sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, throughout the thing. I mean, when Marion's driving away and she's having this imagined. When she's like imagining the conversations that people in her past are having about her, which is brilliant, which is such a brilliant little moment in this movie that you don't really think about. But during that scene, it's just like it keeps getting closer to her face,
Yes.
and it keeps getting darker outside. So it's just like this slow progression into her own psyche of like sort of breaking down, which ultimately, I mean, what you don't really, another thing that people don't think about is that she was gonna take a shower, go to bed, and then go back and give the money back. Like she was doing math on the, being like, okay, I gotta recoup this $700 somehow, and there's a plan like to go back that
Right,
she didn't do what she was supposed to do, and she was gonna go and apologize or whatever. And nope, you're not gonna. Not in this movie. Not when Norman Bates is around.
I think those shots of her driving, that there's different lenses on it, and the way that he builds to those different, like that's Hitchcock to me. Is like with this film, I don't even. It's kind of similar to like watching Citizen Kane now, where it's like I'm not watching it for the story. Like I'm not watching it for the story. I'm watching it as a textbook. I'm watching the angles. I'm watching the film.
Every choice they make. Right. Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing with this. And I want to. I think there's a couple scenes that we can talk about and do like kind of like a scene study on. But that scene between her and Norman, I agree, is the best scene in the movie.
It's the best scene in the movie.
And I think, as a director, how do you take a scene that is essentially just two people talking and make it cinematic? And he shows you how you do that, because there is...
And so simply, too.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like
just different
it's two
angles.
people talking, and it's just different angles. Timing those angles with the dialogue till when, like, a specific moment happens. I think I was breaking it down in here. This is why you take notes, boys.
Exactly.
It starts with like these mid angles, like a neutral, like when they're having just a conversation, when it's just very simply friendly, and then there's a moment where Janet Leigh's character goes, "If I had anyone talk to me the way I just heard your mother talk to you," and then it cuts to this low angle on Norman with the birds in the framing him in the back, with the talons coming out, framing him in the background, and he's in a much more vulnerable position. He starts talking about like thinking about leaving his mother, but like being very boyish and like not in command of that power dynamic. And then she says, "Wouldn't it be better if you put her someplace like an institution?" And that's when we cut to like a hard close-up of him where he leans forward and he goes, "You mean like an institution?" Then he has that like snap. It's a snap change in like his personality. It goes from being like this boyish, like, well, the boy's best friend is his mother, and I couldn't leave her, she's sick, to like, how dare you? And then you're like, oh, okay, this isn't just like a. Because he's charming in the sort of the beginning of this. He's just like,
It's that borderline sociopath. It's into full psychopath.
Because he's a
where, like,
psycho.
He says what he knows.
Yeah.
That's the name of the movie.
And the birds and those angles are the key to the scene, because on those middle shots that are just like normal reverse shots of them, the birds that are in the background are very plaintive, very passive. And then we get that low angle shot, and you get that bird that is just like, completely, in the swooping down and aggressive position. And that low angle shot is his mind saying like, I know my mom is crazy. I know I've got this big thing that is looming over me, and I really wish I could escape it, but I can't.
Nope.
And then she says that one thing about putting her someplace, and that close-up shot of him, he's sitting back, and you see the bird that is right there, and it's a passive bird like we've been seeing, and when he leans forward, that bird goes completely out of focus, and that's mother right now saying like,
exactly.
I am.
Because that was another thing I was going to bring up, is that at the end of the film, we had talked about that scene where the cop is breaking it down as being kind of like a tack on like ending, but it's like in that scene he talks about the fact that the mother is there pretty much all the time, and that she's almost controlling Norman's voice like a puppeteer. So it's interesting to like look at that scene in that regard and think about like when the mother is kind of like taking control and like interfering, asserting the personality. It's like fascinating.
And I just think it's the best writing, it's the best dialogue in the whole film. Like that, it starts out that you eat like a bird.
Right.
You would know.
Yeah.
And then they talk about the taxidermy, and that's great. It's just all these little hints about
There's
things.
one exchange that I just wanted to read because it's so brilliant, and it's some of the best writing in there, if not the best. When he says, "We're all in our private traps, clamped in them, and none of us can ever get out. We scratch and claw, but only at the air, only at each other, and for all of it, we never budge an inch." And then she says, "Sometimes we deliberately step into those traps," and he says, "I was born in mine. I don't mind it anymore." So it's this whole thing where they're almost using her situation as this like sleight of hand into thinking that she's the one with the troubles when they're like so minuscule. And every time he mentions, like when he mentions being mad, she's like, "Yeah, we can all go a little mad sometimes," because she's at the forefront of her brain is her dilemma.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's this really
And it's the
cool,
forefront of our brain too,
Exactly.
because that's what the movie's
we don't
been about
quite-
so
we
far.
don't know that there's a
And then we're like,
complete-
oh, okay, this is kind of a creepy weirdo dude. All right, well that's a fun creepy weirdo dude that he put in the movie for 5 seconds. Now let's see what happens with her and the $40,000 that this movie's about. Oh
I mean,
no,
he won't say the
what?
word bathroom.
That's the thing. Is
just
there's several
brilliant
things.
writing.
Yeah.
Well, it's so smart because he's charming. He's like childish.
She's
He's innocent.
ready. I think she's ready to sleep. She might be ready to sleep with him. Honestly,
He's
there are moments where I
very-
thought that might have been on her brain.
He's very unthreatening. Like that's the thing. That's what he's representing in the beginning, and that's why I think it's smart the way the film played him finding out about the murder, like coming in and being like, oh my god, and having to clean it up because it's set up like that. If his mother did it, then he can't, let his mother, get in trouble. He's he's mama's boy or whatever. He's got to clean it up, and so you believe that because he's been so like unassuming, like just kind of like making jokes, like he has the line about it's got a Bates Motel watermark on it, so you can make all your friends at home jealous. Like he's making jokes.
He
like
is
he's
charming, and it works on her.
And the first part of the movie is, and the way he does that, the way that his frail, very sensitive demeanor is so disarming is because for the whole first part of the movie, all we've been seeing are these overpowering, psychologically aggressive
dominant men. Yeah.
Even like the angles that he uses with the guy in the bank that's talking to her,
Right.
even
Cowboy
Loomis
hat,
to
the
a
sheriff.
certain extent.
What was that character's name? He's like
forget.
some whatever rich guy.
Right.
I just love that scene because you're like, ugh, this gross dude.
Yeah.
But it's almost like he's just using that to justify her crime. Just like, oh well, it's a shitty guy. It's some like sexist,
Right.
braggadocious, confident man.
She
So
enjoys
she
taking the money
should
from
steal
him.
the money. You should steal the money from them. And so, contrasting him, I hadn't thought about that. Contrasting him with the other men, like the movie starts with like a shirtless man in like perfect form, and now you just have this sort of wimpy character that you dust off and you pretend is he wouldn't hurt a fly, that kind of thing.
Right.
But he can't say bathroom. He refused to be called Mr. Bates. She was like, "Thank you, Mr. Bates," and he was like, "Norman," because if he were Mr. Bates, that would be an adult. And then he refuses to go in her room to eat when he brings the food. He's like, "Well, let's go to the parlor. I don't want to," because it's like a barrier, like that's a threshold that he's not allowed to cross. Because when the dialogue that you hear his mother say up at the house is just like some woman, coming in, and that's the central conflict is sex and the threat of sex, and tying the threat of sex to murder, and it's just so cool. It's just a really smart screenplay amidst
really
like this really, well framed, perfectly framed and edited and put together Hitchcock film. It's just really well written too.
He also stammers on falsity.
Yeah.
Falsity.
One thing that, and I don't really know what Hitchcock's usage of this type of thing was prior to this film, but I read that he gave Perkins and Lee leeway to improvise as long as it didn't require a shift in camera movement. And so eating the candy corn was an improv, and it's like that was just him doing wanting to do that to it really does create a sense of this forced levity in the scene. Of
It's like,
him
look how
trying to see
casual I
natural,
am.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's it's interesting with a guy like Hitchcock, who you hear being such kind of a control freak of what's in the film, to be ready to let go like that to Bernard Herrmann.
Well, he's famously said that actors are cattle.
Exactly.
Because he doesn't.
I think he let go of the wheel in this one, and let it become what it was, and that's why it was such a.
He let go, like he's like
nothing.
Not
like he's not in charge of the wheel. I'm just saying.
I'm in charge of
this is the frame.
Square.
Don't alter the frame. Don't let me move when I don't want to move.
Right.
Because that's what
doing
he's
inside
all about.
But if you have an idea, I'll listen to your idea.
There's so much that he does that is just trying to nail point of view, that like the content is almost frivolous. It doesn't really matter what's happening as long as you can have that sense, through how he edits and who he focuses on in a scene. Like the opening, like that opening of like the sort of peeping Tom view, or voyeuristically, literally entering a room with the camera to look upon this, much like Norman looks upon,
Through the hole,
It's just the male gaze and like the looking intruding on people's private lives. And when you intrude on people's private lives, you get stuff like, intrigue and sex and theft and murder and stuff like that. And that's just.
I mean, the way the house buyer is is sort of like. Suggested kind of like sexual predator, and the way he's just kind of like ogling her is a sense of invasion of her privacy. It's like really throughout the film.
Yeah, it's just really smart, this movie.
and that scene between them, that's where we get that point of view shift, because for the whole movie we've been in Marion's point of view. We see those point of view shots of the car. Like that is what's interesting about the point of view shots from the cars. It's not the middle of it. You don't see the whole hood. You only see the hood part that she is seeing, right?
That's why when she sees the boss, it feels like we got caught. Like it's a really like cool scene that like shifts the tone of the film a little bit,
And then we get him peeping in on Marion, and it's like, even before we dispense with our quote unquote heroine of the movie, I have just violated, and now I'm in this point of view. We're going to be in this point of view for the rest of the movie.
Well, it's him diving into that sin that his mother so detests. He looks at that, he looks at her changing, and then he leaves, presumably to go dress up like his mother and then come down and murder her. So it's just like, well, I just sinned, so I got to go get my mom outfit on and murder a lady. That's just what's got to happen. Oh, man. Norman, you've done it again. How many cars are in that lake? That's my question.
I know.
Right.
How many dead women?
What's interesting is like even after it shifts into like Norman's point of view, it then later becomes like a detective story between the sister and the lover, and like we're gonna solve this.
Well, he keeps shifting perspective.
Yes.
In the beginning, it's all Marion, Janet Leigh's character, and then Norman intrudes into the narrative. Just because she has to pull over, by happenstance, by like her vision is clouded, like it's a part of that sequence of the reverse shot of getting close to her and it getting darker. Is the reverse shot is her vision out of the car becoming more and more blurred, just like her morality in the movie and stuff like that. Right. So at this crossroads, she finds her unfortunate doom. She stumbles upon a psycho, and does she deserve it? Hey, no, no, she doesn't. No. But I think it's just so interesting the way he played with. Well, this isn't a good person that we're following. We should be on the side of the police officer that's stalking her because she's paying for trading in a car suspiciously, and once she's been found out, there's the shots that linger on license plates
with
and
a police officer and the used car salesman. Those are really good establishment, like character development.
The used car salesman, I wrote, it's funny. That scene is funny. It's a funny scene.
Yeah, what's his name? Something Charlie?
I don't know. But
there's a great line where he says, I don't want anyone to California Charlie. Like,
I don't want anyone having bad things to say about California Charlie.
And he says that he's like, you can do anything you have a mind to. Being a woman, you will.
Right.
And it's like a one.
So weird.
And then just the shot it's so Hitchcock of the police officer across the way.
Yep.
You can almost see the sun glint off his sunglasses. It's like it's just such a strong image.
You can almost see him like walking over, pulling a photo of his pocket, saying, "Have you seen this boy?"
Very interesting.
There's
I
definitely
did not think about that.
Like that was the first thing that I thought of was he looks just like this is Terminator 2, you know, and that could be, you know,
man,
that's
I would
probably
not put it past Cameron.
That's probably
to
what
be-
Cameron
to
was,
take
you know,
that
calling
as-
back to.
Man, that is really
Because
cool.
it's just such a, you know, he's power stancing
Yes,
against his car, just like watching, being like, I'm watching you trading your car
Right.
and paying for cash.
Oh,
Like what?
when the three of them watch her drive away. It's such a cool
Yeah.
shot.
It's has nothing to do with like what happens in the movie because it's
I know.
it's
because
about
it's
a psycho.
all sleight of hand. It's
Yeah.
like it's why This and the Birds are so interesting
So
in
check
his
out
catalog.
this
It's 'cause
cool story, this tense story. Will she get caught? No, she'll get murdered by a man who dresses as his mom.
he almost starts it like it's a film noir.
Yeah,
like it's like
absolutely.
she steals money. She's got this lover. They're having an affair. Like
It's
like,
absolutely, yeah.
and then he's like, nope. It's just complete
horror.
study of
Yeah.
psychological unraveling, like
And
and murder.
That shifting, you know, perspective of Janet Leigh is, you know, all the movie, and then Norman Bates. We get his perspective as he's cleaning stuff up, and then we go back to the sister and then the detective, and then it's the detective's perspective because we are always getting close shots of him, and then he gets murdered too. You know, it's just like, well, guess what? Every narrator that I give you is gonna, you know, is not something that you know.
After her
you can
murder, he
believe in.
like does it again because he's like, you know, Martin Balsam. His entrance, he's got that, you know, the tight close up on his
Which
face.
is
that he
crazy.
walks
That's
into.
such a drastically different shot than what we've seen in the rest of the film. It's just like that. Like you're like, okay, buddy, who are you?
You know, I was thinking about like how much Hitchcock valued the element of surprise for this film. Like there's a I don't know if it's a true story, but there was a reported thing that he told his assistant to buy up all the copies of the books so no one knew. He didn't allow the actors to do interviews. He really kept it a secret.
He
because-
wanted it to be
and
a
he
surprise,
and
you
he
know?
added, and the novel starts with Norman. So it's like this idea to create this whole, and it was only 2 chapters involved, Marion, and 17 chapters involved. So it's like, it's brilliant to basically say, like, to use that element of surprise as your entire switch of the, you know, it's just a really brilliant
I wish I
device.
could have seen this movie, you know, blind. Like this movie was very much
Right.
is very much in the zeitgeist now. Like the whole Norman Bates. There's,
Right.
you know, there's you know the movie that was made about Hitchcock with Anthony Hopkins.
I haven't seen it. Is it worth watching?
It's fine. It's
There
you
were
know,
2 that came out, right? There was one that focused on his relationship with Grace Kelly, and that was that one.
This one was
Anthony
Hopkins
Hopkins.
I
and
remember
Helen
that.
Mirren
Right.
as
Well, and then Ken Jones did a documentary about Hitchcock Truffaut.
Okay.
yeah, that was probably,
Gotcha.
but it was all right. But it was him making Psycho. It
Okay.
was like him during so it was like going through the you know studio doesn't want you doing this, you know, well the press is like, what's the twist gonna be, you know, and all the hype and stuff. So it's like it's a kind of a goofy film. I would have wished for something a little more serious and not kind of hokey. But there's a couple fun moments in that. Like there's a fun moment in that film where he's transported into the life of Ed Gein, the serial murderer who Norman Bates is kind of based on. And I listened to a 3-part podcast on Ed Gein recently. Very worse than Norman. like made skin suits of people and stuff like that. Like, but he had that slight like mother connection where
Right.
he kept after his mother died, he kept her room pristine and never, you know, he lived like a pig everywhere else, but that room was kept like nice and tidy and pristine. Like that hit something with him, and so there's a fun scene in the Hitchcock movie. I think is it just called Hitchcock, where he's standing in the room with like Ed Gein as like the police show up at Ed Gein's place, and there's he's just like, that's mother's room, and he like runs out, and so it's, I don't know, there's not much to glean from that movie, but I think it had a couple like fun little insights into what it was just cheesy. It was just cheesy as hell. Because at the end of the movie, he's literally addressing the camera. He's like, I wonder what venture I will do next. And then a bird flies on his shoulder, and he's just like, bleh. And boom, directed by not Alfred Hitchcock. You know?
And I know.
And I know it was. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just so interesting. Like, the history of this movie is so interesting. How he had to get stuff past, you know, censors. How the cutting of the shower scene is crazy. How that was made in the '60s almost.
You know, I was reading that there were people in the censor board that were saying that they could see Janet Leigh's breast in one scene, and so
In one frame.
In one frame,
like one frame.
So it's like, okay, and it reminded me of what they did with Team America, where they said there was too much stuff. So then they said, okay, we'll change it. They gave the exact same film reel back, and they're like, yep, now it's good. So it's like everyone who had their assertion flipped it, and then the ones who didn't see the breast now saw it. It's just to prove that, like, no, you're all.
Why are you
full
going
of it.
frame by frame to see if this is like appropriate? It's just like, it's clearly not a voyeuristic.
Well, it was 19.
This is in 1960, yeah.
So it was.
But
so
that was
ahead of its
what
time.
surprised me, like the beginning of the film, where it's just like this shirtless man, and then she's showing a lot of skin as well. I was like, oh, fucking 1960.
First movie to show a toilet too.
Yeah, that
America,
is.
you know, I really-
first flushed toilet in a movie. Yeah. He's
That's the
breaking.
controversial
He's
thing.
breaking barriers down. Do you know the toilet? Every movie where there's an animated animal that's small that gets accidentally flushed down a toilet, that wouldn't have happened
That's right.
without Alfred Hitchcock.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the Alvin and the Chipmunks movies.
Oh man.
The shower scene, as famous as it is, I mean, it's worth saying that to look at that frame by frame and the design of it and how carefully orchestrated each shot is in hiding specific angles of her so that you don't see too much nudity. And that he was the one that was like, no, I don't need the shot of the knife going into the body.
No.
All I need is...
Apparently, there's only one frame that even suggests showing it going into the abdomen.
And it was
that's
like
it.
it
But
was
it's
like
not
just
even
a
apparent
knife
to
up
the
to
eye.
like a torso.
Right.
There's like just a brief.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's crazy. All equally haunting is the shot of her dead on the ground, where it's like sort of like rotating
It's
and slowly
brilliant.
moving up. It's like, oh man, that was, and it just pans right up
The
and goes
use of
right to the
close-
money.
The use of close-up in this film, and there's also the shot where Norman is dragging her body, and it's this really controlled, like kind of medium shot that's just so, the lighting in it is so amazing.
His shot variation is people should be jealous of him, because he'll do like the shot reverse shot, but he'll change it according to what needs to be done in the scene, and then he also won't return back to like the way that he was shooting it. You never see like a shot reverse shot from him and then a change of angle and then a return to a shot reverse shot, because he's just like, nope, the dynamic of this scene has changed, so it's different, you know? So I can't go back to the same visual thing. It's so damn smart.
When I called it a perfect film to you the other day, and you were like, well, it has that scene at the end, I realized I meant it's a perfectly shot film.
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean. There's not a shot that's wasted. Everything is there for a reason. It's just amazing to study and watch his choices in the film.
Here's my question for you guys. This is a question that I had. How did the conversation with Norman that Marion had, how'd that change her mind and have her go back? Because that was my thought when she was just like, because I had forgotten that she was like,
I think she made the choice before she got in the hotel.
Yeah?
I think she made the choice in the car.
Okay.
I think that, because I read an interesting
way they
theory.
frame it just
I read an
seems
interesting
like,
theory that
you know.
the rain was like the suggestion of like wanting to be baptized, and then when she gets in the shower, it's like the final like, and then when she, but then again, I don't know. I'd love to study that scene again to see if there are any clues as to if her mind turns during that.
Well, that's what he says, is it's him saying, we all go a little mad sometimes, and then she stands up, conversation ended, like, I'm going to go to bed, and I'm going to go back, I got a long drive back to Phoenix tomorrow. And so it's just like, well, why was, like, what was it in this sort of, was it him sort of being aggressive in the clicking tongues thing? Did he almost, like, scare her into being like, well, I don't want to be seen as a terrible person or whatever, I need to, you know, you need to stay with your convictions, you know?
Well, she does.
she has a bit of dialogue where she says, "I got to rescue myself from being trapped in my own little private island," and I think like just the fact of him, he says like, "What are you running away from?" And he's like, I don't mean to pry. I think just the fact of him questioning her, and her having to be like, well, what do I say?
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking about what I've done. How do I even say that? Oh my God, that's not me.
Yeah.
I think even just that interrogation or that questioning is what leads her to be like, this isn't me. What am I doing? I got to go back.
Well, it's also that, like toward the end of that scene when I'm just thinking of like the justifications and triggers for what made him murder her as well. Because at the end of that scene, she's decided to go back to Phoenix, and he's decided to murder her. It's consciously or subconsciously, the mother has decided to murder her. And that's like, what I think it is it's that idea of that the women are trying to take, you away from me, and women are all like liars and cheaters and stuff. And there was the moment where he almost like tests her and tricks her at the end of that scene, where he's like, well, good night, Ms. And she says, Crane.
That's right.
And then he goes to the book,
confirms
and he sees that she's written
And I wondered what his
Samuels.
thought was there, because I
His
remember
thought-
he had a
because
reaction.
Well, because he stands up, he sees that, and then he goes and he peeps on her, and then he goes
Liar.
and murders her.
Right.
Yeah,
That's basically
he's
like,
liar.
yeah,
She's
mother's
a liar.
right.
Mother's right. She's a liar.
Right,
and then
right.
he looks in, and she's undressing, and she's like, mother's right. She's a whore. And then
And later on, when
That's what's so
So
smart.
right, he goes to look to see is she. And
Is
then
she a liar?
confirms it.
Yeah. Oh, well, she is. She has to die.
Right.
It's just as mother says.
And later on, when Balsam is questioning him, he says the thing about like a woman's not going to make a fool of you. He's like, I'm not incapable of being fooled, not even by a woman.
Yeah.
So even that, it's like, yes, she lied to him. I fell for it.
Can we
I
talk
wanted
about-
her, and now, yeah.
Can we talk about the staircase shot,
Oh, yeah.
please? Because it's just brilliant for so many reasons, not just construction of the shot, but like also, like everything's blurry behind Arbogast as he's coming up. It's like this cool use of focus, and then just the switch to the aerial shot to protect the knowledge
The
of
identity,
who the killer is. I mean, it's just really one of the most amazing things in film.
And that shot, like, it's two shots superimposed. So
Wow.
he's in like a chair like this, and
With
he's
like a
doing
pulley
the
system.
motion,
Right.
with the camera right here, and then he gets the shot just of the staircase going down, and then he blends the two together.
God.
He's good at stuff. He's a pretty
Yeah.
good. He's
He
a pretty good
understood how
camera
to-
dude.
Good innovator.
He's a pretty solid camera dude, I'd say.
Yeah.
And so that overhead shot, and it was crazy because we just talked about Taxi Driver.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like I see that overhead
Oh,
shot.
yeah.
And
I mean,
okay, there it is.
Split was
the
pretty
end there,
overt
yeah.
about lifting it. And I mean, Shyamalan's obviously such like a Hitchcock, but it's like he blatantly used that in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I love this, but Scorsese in Raging Bull, the fight between LaMotta and Sugar Ray, he designed that sequence to emulate the shower scene.
No way. I can't wait to watch
And like,
that.
and it's
Oh,
like
God.
Wow.
the glove going down is like the knife going down. Her hand on the shower curtain is like his hand on the ring.
That's crazy, man.
Scorsese.
What a hack! Just stealing,
stuff.
stealing stuff from. Ugh. I hate Raging Bull now.
boy.
Bad movie.
Terrible.
Oh man.
Well, that's what's so interesting. What I love about this movie is it seemed it was very progressive at its time. It was it's less. It sort of thrust us into a new era of horror because this movie was, like I said, it used to be very fantastical. It used to be very Dracula, monster focused, sort of like the big scary ants, the 50s
Yeah.
in the movies. Like that's what horror was. And then this ushered in like horrors can be, human and psychologically crazy, and that's what gave us Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So much
yeah.
to the bluntness and the grim realism of the violence.
That's what
owes
is
so
it,
much
it-
to this.
It's everything from it, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Friday the 13th, all
they
these
say
like
this is the first
this
official
is the first
slasher
film.
film, right?
Yeah, and then that's what it changed horror.
Yes,
because it was.
Friday the 13th, the mother doing the killing.
But it's so smartly, I don't know. It's so intelligently done. The way, because it ushered in a new era of slasher film. But then what we saw was just slasher films, you know, where it's like. First 10 minutes, that's what Scream made fun of for so long, was just like, it's very structured. It's just like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. This is not structured at all. Like, it's almost like if I saw a movie that dragged me along for 40 minutes one way and then just like cut me and like gave me a brand new story, killed the main character, gave me a brand new story, I'd be mad at that movie. You know? Yeah. But today, it's a different game, you know?
Yeah, it revolutionized and made its own structure. One film that I think does owe something to this film, and it's weird because you wouldn't even think about it, is Fargo. So Fargo does the same thing. It starts out with William H. Macy and then Steve Buscemi and
Peter Stormare.
Peter Stormare. Yeah. So they're going along, and then there's a death. And then we get Marge Henderson.
It happens a little quicker in that one.
Yes,
but
it's
yes,
like a half an hour.
But it is the same idea. And you do get similar visual things now with driving on an empty road, you know. That's interesting. That is very true. But like you don't see that. And Coen Brothers have done that a couple times. Like Burn After Reading, I think of, where and this was more like, 50, 60 minutes in, halfway through, when big death, shocking sort of pivot in narrative in the way that the characters act, but that's a farce and that's a comedy.
No Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men. You get, but that was like at the very end of the film where that, that shocking moment happens for you. Coens do that.
Yeah.
Coens do that. Smart people have to do that. You have to be good at making movies if you're going to do something like that.
I think Hitchcock understood the cinematic experience so much that it's like thinking about what is going to work most effectively on an audience. So it's like this understanding of composition.
That's what he gave a shit about.
With that.
That's what he cared about. That was he loved
he loved the movies.
Screams. He
that's
loved.
What's great.
He loved controlling the way the audience is going to feel about a particular moment.
Right.
That was another scene in Hitchcock that I liked. It was the premiere of Psycho, and he walks out of the theater before the shower scene, and he stands in the back. And he just opens the door like slightly, and then the shower scene happens, and there's screams coming, and he's just like, and he's like doing like a little like, and it's like a fun little like, because that's what he loved. He loved, and he talked about it so much about how he loved to trick an audience and how he loved to, and which he did. This whole movie's a trick. It's 40 minutes of Marion, she dies. 20 minutes of this detective guy, he dies. The whole movie you're thinking that it's the mother, and then it's Norman. And so it's just trick after trick that just works so well, and he utilizes with every single skill that he had. And this is something that I said to Devon before we started, but I stopped taking notes after the shower scene, and I just sat and enjoyed the movie. Yeah. So I have not a lot to say on the second half, other than 2 thumbs up, but like, that's what's just so cool about it, is I was just like, I'm done taking notes. Like, I just want to, like, I'm still thrilled at this. I knew this all was coming, but I just want to watch the rest of this. And that's what's so cool about it. It's such a cool movie.
And that he had the foresight to do that. Like you said, it's like, if he reads the novel, nothing about the novel lays down a blueprint of doing this. Like, he had to say, like, I know exactly what to do because the audience is not going to expect it. And
he knew how to cinematically adapt it. And that's the thing, is knowing what not to include or what to add or how to shift it into he really took it inside the mind of the viewer, especially with that shower scene, and making you experience it like that, rather than just showing it.
He's all about point of view. Right. He's always been about point of view. I mean, you get that more
explicitly. How you
explicitly.
affect the audience the most.
Last time I was here, this is how you get it more effectively with Rear Window, is all about point of view. I mean, it's a movie
almost
that is literally about point of view. But he does that, in the way that he, like in that first scene, we're slowly getting more and closer shots of Marion, so you know that it's going to be about her. It's just like the small, simple things that he does to just like nail down perspective, and using the camera to catalog to the audience. This is what you need to know, not only about what's happening in the movie, but about how the characters feel about it. These are the things that we're going to linger on. I'm going to show you close-ups of her writing her name down, because that's going to come back later. I'm going to show you close-ups of the license plates that she's looking at, because she knows she needs to change the license plate, but we didn't talk about, you know, there's no line that's like, I need to change my license plates. Like, that's, in a movie today, you'd get like a guy being like, okay, sitting in the car being like, all right, what do I got to, talking to himself, what do I got to do before I can get away with this crime? Well, I got to scrub these plates, I got to trade in the car, I got to do the, but it just her doing it, and the utilization of the music, the utilization of the camera, and the editing, it's perfect.
Do you remember the shot where Arbogast is looking at the book, the ledger or whatever, and then he like, the registration book, and when Anthony Perkins looks in, the camera moves up into a shot where it's looking up at his face, and then it moves back from it when he stops looking.
And I don't know, like, I mean, it's
like an
a
optical
pretty weird
illusion.
angle on him anyway. 'Cause
Right,
it's a low
but I
angle
felt a
looking
slight
up,
shift. Or was it his face? Was it an illusion? Like, was it the camera? It was very interesting.
And that's the thing. It's everything, because it's the way that it's the movement of the camera. It's his movement matching the movement of the camera.
Right.
The lighting completely changes in that he's in complete light, and then he goes in. It's like it turns into like a noir shot, and it's just like one part of his face.
Or it's just like, hey, look at this, and it's just like what in a normal movie, it's just like
They would have just looked.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is just like, look, because it's adding that
Taking
style,
you,
and then
right.
it's taking you into the point of view and perspective.
Exactly.
He's all about perspective, point of view.
Yes.
The other thing he's a genius
Voyeurism.
with in the point of view shots is that he knows how specifically how to translate in cinema, in cinematic imagery. He knows how to translate the feeling of what the character is feeling. So, like in those shots where the rain is coming down, like there's a shot of her going like this because, like, you know, the way the light is hitting across the raindrop, and we do that because he's made it do that.
I
In
feel
North
like
by
you- I
Northwest,
feel like-
when he's driving drunk, in Notorious, there's a shot of her being like fuzzy and she's upside down, and then like the camera like moves up, and like the character that's walking towards her completely turns up.
Was it
it's
Hitchcock,
crazy.
the director, who was like, I want them to like be peering around
No, I
the
was
corner?
just thinking of Polanski.
Polanski,
When you
does,
said,
yeah.
when you were saying that,
Yeah.
I thought of that moment, because it's like knowing what the audience is going to do.
The director being
I mean,
like,
look
why-
at
well, why
Repulsion
would you-
and
you
a lot
know.
of the Polanski flicks are definitely.
Where you're like,
Hitchcock.
why don't we just go in there? And it's like, it's about peering in there. It's about making
Exactly.
the
Make the-
audience wanna.
I was going to say, during the rain coming at the windshield, it's like you as the viewer are almost like
Come
trying
on,
to
what
see
is that?
through the rain.
Yeah. And those are the types of things, like like him as a director, like he's had to have had people that have been like, you know, do you really need that shot? And he's just like, yeah,
Shut
I totally,
up.
absolutely
Of
need that
course
shot.
I do.
Everything is there for a reason, except that damn ending, man.
Yeah, man.
I can't.
It didn't bother me as much as I think
Same.
it did, as it did you.
When I
Yeah.
watched it this time, I was like, okay. But it's very much that if they're making that movie again, you know, if you're remaking that movie and you're trying to make it the perfect movie, you probably don't have that scene at the end, or at least you
Or you
cut
could
it
have had
down.
one or two lines and then had the moment of Norman, because the moment of Norman, the final moment before they pull the car from the. Are you fine with them pulling the car from the swamp as the final shot of the film?
Yeah.
Yes, only because what precedes it is that shot of him and then the superimposing
Right,
of her
right.
skull.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But why isn't that the last shot? Why can't they just have the coolest,
I don't know.
most dynamic shot?
I know.
They gotta pull the thing out.
This-
I think it's almost to be like, hey, remember that story from an hour and a half ago? Hey, remember
This is
that
how
part?
we tie it all together.
Yeah. He's almost like, hey, remember, you idiots? You see what I've done?
And also remember, you were on the side of the killer when it didn't go into the swamp.
You're like, oh no, he's not gonna get away with this murder.
You know, my favorite incorporator of Hitchcock imagery and moments into his films is Brian De Palma, just because
Oh, yeah.
Dressed to Kill is my favorite kind of Hitchcock imitation film ever, because it just like nails that feeling of just something not being right, and capturing, using cinematic devices to enhance tension. You know?
I wish I could like that movie more.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's very much one of those like subject matter of the film sort of doesn't coincide very well with like how brilliantly it's like put together. Where I'm just like, it's kind of dumb and boring.
I mean, Sisters and Blowout, he definitely has his share of homages that are just beautiful films.
Oh, the Carrie, and when it's everything in Carrie, all the close-up things in Carrie are just like so Hitchcockian. He's just good. He defined how to make a thrilling film.
He really did.
He's the definition of it. It's just like when you're learning how to pace a film, how to surprise an audience, how to have that surprise be meaningful and not just like most horror movies today, which are kind of, cheap jump scare laden.
Exactly. He didn't have jump scares. He focused on character development, and like you said, it's all perspective. It's really creating that tension through using point of view and knowing how to balance it all together.
Everything in the movie's point of view. When the mother gets turned around, that's it being revealed to you, just as it's being revealed to the character. And he comes in through the doorway. It's just like from the dark to the light, where everything's point of view.
I think you might have touched on it, but by having the house buyer be a slime ball, it does justify it. It makes you. It's like morally makes you root for her, but just not feel as bad about her act.
And then in her imagined, even in her imagined conversation, he says some like sexist, like she was just like she was
and you
flirting
almost
with me.
forget
And you're almost
none
like,
of that's actually happening.
And then when it cuts to the shot of her when she's imagining that, like she has a smile on her face.
Oh, I
like,
love that.
I do remember why I did this, and
very similar to Anthony Perkins doing the same thing when he's hearing his mother's voice inside his head at the end. Almost the same exact type of like smile.
Well, Anthony Perkins is just so dang good in this movie. He's
good.
just like it's the definitive psycho.
He played it differently than
portrayal.
so many actors would, I think. He just had this
You're worried
sensitivity.
for him. You're worried for him. Like when you know that a murder has been committed and he's trying to cover it up, you're like worried that that he's gonna get caught. Because you're on his side because he plays it just so well. So like innocently, where he's just like, I don't mean for any of this to happen.
They sell the domineering mother theme really well, from the moment you see her in the window to having the voice, which was done by like 3 different actresses. I was just reading how they did that. It's like it really but it's enough that like you think that this could be. When you think about it afterwards, watching it again, you're like, yeah, this could be his voice.
Right.
Like it could be this, Yeah.
You wouldn't hurt a fly.
I think what bothers me about the ending is that because there's so much shock in this and so much like, oh my God, why is he doing that? Why did he do this? Why, when you're rethinking it, and then it's just a character standing up and being like, all right, so for the past hour, this is what's happening.
It's like the end of a Dragnet episode. It's
Yeah.
like, do we really need that summation? Like,
Which if they just
did a 1960s audience need that sort of?
maybe
Maybe?
that is
this
the
is what's been going on here.
Right.
Yeah.
In case you didn't
Hey,
figure it out.
hey, I know you're thinking, what was that guy doing with the girls' clothes on? Well,
What happened in that bathroom?
He was a transvestite. Not exactly. Hold the phone.
That part was...
guys.
And it's the way he delivered those lines,
Yeah.
too, which were it just made it so cheesy, kind of.
Yeah, that's what's so dumb about it. That's why you should have seen the way his mother had control of him.
I do think that if you did, like you said, like if you did piecemeal out the dialogue, and if you had a different actor who kind of like sat down and been like, this is what I heard, this is what he told me, and then like a couple of things, and then we get the shot of him sitting there. I mean, it just stops dead for me every time when he stands up and he starts talking.
It's just like if at the end of Jaws, like a detective walks in and he's just like, well, here's what happened. There's a giant shark in the lake. But it sort of represents more than just a giant shark.
Yeah. I mean, it's really the only flaw of the film.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
Everything else is perfect, and then it's just because it's also it skids it to such a halt.
Yeah.
It's just like you just got that thrilling final scene where the mother's revealed and he comes out, he wrestles the knife away from him, and he, you know, and that's that. And right before your thrilling sort of, you know, into the mind of the psycho sort of scene, because, you know, presumably, I mean, we have the benefit of rewatch, but the people just watching it for the first time are like, this is our first moment where we know that this guy's a psycho, like that this guy's a psycho, and not just like protecting his mother.
Like it really was a reveal. It doesn't feel quite like the reveal it is when you rewatch it, right? But it's like at that time, it's like.
But it was just like, it almost felt like spoon feeding, because so much of the movie, and we've talked about it, is just like in simplistic visual storytelling, and then he just has this guy barge in and just be like,
it's almost a lack of faith in your audience. You know, or the lack of faith in the knowledge of your audience. It's
so
like,
the hobbits are from the Shire.
Yeah, it's such an unnecessary spoon feed, right? You know, yeah.
Fellowship of the Ring had to take the ring to Mordor to destroy it. Did they? No. Yes. Did they? Maybe.
What's the bird? I don't know. I don't know where it came from, but it's a bird. I had a similar reaction to in Vertigo when they do the switch in the flashback, detailing exactly what Elster did and why. Like, it's that kind of like, stop the movie, let's let the audience catch up, let me give you everything, and then the audience goes, what? And then we're back into the story.
It just sort of feels like I'd read a book in middle school or like in high school. Read a book, and I'd be like, why we just read that book? And then the teacher tells me why we just read that book. And it's just like, okay, all right. Thank you. It's just like, see, the American dream, Great Gatsby. Like, it's okay, I get it. Why? It just felt so unnecessary. I wasn't as bothered by it this time. I was ready to hate it, but I was just like, okay. It wasn't as long as I remember.
It's easy to forgive.
But it's still like, why?
Well, and
what are you doing?
Right. When you were asking
you just
the question,
nailed everything.
When you were asking the question as to why, when Norman in that scene decided to do it, every bit of information that I'm using comes from that final scene, because he says it in plain terms. So there's a part of me there. It's like, if you excised it completely, would we actually be missing something? Like, is there something that I would miss if it was out completely and it just cut to that shot of him sitting there? There'd be a lot of questions, but I'd also understand a little bit more of the relationship between.
But it's like, it would make discussing it easier, you know, like, or more fun, just like if it wasn't just like so plainly stated, and you know.
It's interesting because in Taxi Driver, like, obviously so much was kind of influenced by this, that final scene. We've talked about how it like doesn't feel like any other scene in the film, but like on the opposite side of the spectrum, where it's like a brilliant
and, you know,
idea to like have this. It's like, well, this doesn't feel like this. Where at least we can be open to interpretation, whereas the other one is like, nope, this is it. It's almost like a Cliff Notes of the film in a badly acted scene. Like, why?
Just so you know, because that was bad. Here's what went down.
Well, and there's really, if you look at Vera Miles's like acting in this scene, it's weird how like who plays the lover, I forget.
Lewis, I don't know.
But the two of them, they're more interested in like, really, what was it? Like, they don't look like they just
like
lost the person they love.
Yeah,
it's
really so weird.
They're more interested in the explanation in like a
which breaks my heart, because I love Vera Miles and I love her performance up to that point. Like, it's just like, it feels like Hitchcock went to an audience and showed him.
Tell us more, why don't you please?
Like,
Miss Mary Poppins, tell us all about it.
It feels like he showed the movie to a group of people.
And they were like, I don't get it.
And they're like, what are the questions that you have?
I feel like that
so
might have
now
happened.
I'm going to give those questions to my
just
two
a little bit of
literally
insecurity. Like,
Bruce Willis was dead the whole time.
But everything else is brilliant. It's a great film.
Not too big of a spot on it though. You know, it's really
it's
very forgivable.
It's just so it's almost funny. It's almost like, what? It's just like that was a weird choice, but yeah. It does sort of take away the But like, I mean, I don't know how I would react to just a hard cut to Norman in the jail cell.
Right. Well, that's why I think you could have achieved the same thing with 3 lines of dialogue.
Right.
Yeah.
Or 4, whatever it needed to be. You know, you just see that that's what's happened. That they just got explained. You don't
Also,
need
the way
much.
he filmed it, it was like a PSA,
Yes.
like a old.
It was like a stagnant shot. Like
like
it
a
just
stagnant
really was
shot.
like,
It's boring.
Yes.
You know, I'm just like, why?
Like almost like
It seems like a pickup shot because he showed the movie to friends and they were like, what does any of this mean? And so I want to blame a 1960s audience for that happening.
Or like, and I know this has happened to a film of John Ford's and Howard Hawks. It's almost like the studio got it and said, we need something else. Just take a second unit crew and go out and make this.
I mean, who ended up distributing it? I forget the story.
Paramount?
Paramount.
They did distribute, but they wouldn't fund it.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe they, in order to like distribute it, they forced something. I don't know, like because it does seem like that thing Wells dealt with for so many years of like the studio thinking they know better, and not ruining a masterpiece,
almost
but
like-
doing damage to it.
Like, you know, Blade Runner, like how Harrison Ford deliberately said that the ending monologue from the original cut, the ending monologue, he deliberately said it bad. And it's so bad. It's just like, well, I guess, you know, we went out to say.
I guess that's pretty good, Harrison.
He's just boringly just like, and we were all Blade Runners that you know, or like some dumb, but the studio's like, great, put it in. It's just like, no, we thought we could make it bad, so you'd say no. Oh crap! It's almost like he did that. He's just like, is that what you want? You want a scene where he just literally comes out and explains everything to the audience, and they're like, that was perfect. Put it right in there. He's just like, come on.
You know, Ridley
I'm an artist.
Scott. Ridley Scott has a little bit of Hitchcock in him, not necessarily in a visual sense, but in a I know what this is going to do to the audience sense. If you think about Alien and how the ending of that and how it feels,
You're just like,
I think it's safe to say every filmmaker who's a little
Right.
bit Hitchcock is
Yeah.
the list would grow. Yeah.
But
we all go a little mad sometimes.
I had a thought, but it went away.
Oh.
What else, Tim?
Well, no, I think that it's such a good movie. It's hit itself in like the zeitgeist of film so hard. It's so fun to watch. It's a fun movie.
It is.
Like it's not like I'm not like scared by like old movies because you know desensitization in the way that we you know view things. It all does feel very fake and performy to me in a lot of ways. But it's just so fun. Like that's what makes it different from like, I'm not gonna watch an old Frankenstein movie or like an old Dracula. I might, you know, but I'm not like clamoring for that because it's not as, you know, compared to today where it's spectacle based, I'm not as impressed. This I will always be impressed by because it's just filmmaking 101. It's just like tell your story simply. Employ surprises in ways that you know that will still just shock and surprise, and add so many details that I'm still finding stuff years later. You know, the whole she's a liar. She changed her name. That I clued into this time. I was like, oh my god, yeah, because she's just like liar. Whore. Okay, mother is right.
Well,
I will go murder her.
Because
now.
doesn't he have sort of a smug smile? And I didn't
little bit,
think
yeah,
I
he
didn't
does.
think about what it meant, and it really means like mother's right.
Mother's right.
They're all liars. Yeah.
All women are liars and whores.
I just
Don't clip
because
that
of
part.
watching it.
Don't take that out of context.
Hey, there's the teaser.
This week on About Film Essentials, listen to Tim go on a 45-minute sexist tirade. It's weird. It's bad. We were talking about Psycho, and he just goes, "Here's the thing about Me Too. The man."
I learned so much about Tim this time around. No, I think because it's one of those surprise films, like we talk about films like Shyamalan, like they don't hold up after repeated viewings, but with this film it does because it is such a textbook film. Like I'm watching it and I'm not bored because I know I don't care about any of this because in 50 minutes she's going to be dead anyway.
The
I'm
twists
looking at
are cheap.
Yep.
No.
The
And
twists are cheap.
and his
And
films
they've
are
been thought out.
psychologically complex, whereas Shyamalan was gimmicky.
With Shyamalan, and that's the just the placement of it, the pacing of it. Shyamalan puts his twists right at the end, so that if there's a hole in it, couldn't clean it up at the end. He pops that baby
The twist
40
is the
minutes
whole
in.
thing.
The twist is the whole movie.
Not just the cherry on the sundae.
Yeah, it's the whole movie.
I love watching it for the variance of lens choice, the editing of it,
shot
the
variance is
shots of
crazy
everything.
good.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's just
great.
so simply and so well done.
You talking about how fun it is to watch, it made me think of the music and how, yes, there's this harshness to the that, but that almost feels like a carnival.
Right.
It almost feels like it's like sinister.
You're on for a ride.
But like, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. It's great. It's so good. I just was sitting there like, ooh, doing like a little, and I get that with certain movies that like play with editing. Just have fun with it. Like it was fun watching and being like, oh, that's so cool how we put it together. It's shot way out of left field here, but I also just recently watched Scott Pilgrim again, and that's similar where it's just like, this is fun. This is awesome. The decisions that are being made to put this kind of crazy cavalcade together.
Look how much fun a visionary filmmaker is having with cinema, and you can't help but be just turned on by that and just affected by that and want to watch more and more. And I love the fact that we ran out of time and we didn't get to talk about Gus Van Sant's remake because
That's great that didn't happen.
we are not going to dignify it by talking about it.
Well, you guys aren't fans of Anne Heche's butthole?
Who's the sexist now?
You guys aren't fans? Come on. That's all that remake has going for it. I'm gonna cut to a cow in a field while the murder's happening.
Anytime you do something and then you justify it by saying you wanted to prove that you could do it,
But you didn't do it.
Right,
You
yeah.
didn't. You super didn't do it.
Right.
And watching how great the scene between Janet Leigh and Anthony Perkins is in that scene, and watching how Vince Vaughn does it and how Anne Heche did. Like,
And
it's
the thing
just
is,
a
I
complete,
actually like Vince Vaughn as an actor,
Me too.
and he was actually good in like A Cool, Dry Place. He's had some dramatic performances that are actually really good.
Yeah.
And it's really sad to watch that and be like, yeah.
Because I want to see him remake it, but have Vince Vaughn just talking like he's in one of his comedy movies.
Exactly. That would be
He's
great.
like,
Now that
we're
would
all
be
sucking
something.
traps. Yeah, we're sucking traps. Traps happen all the time. The traps are all over the
In
place.
fact, if they had done that, it would have been so cool.
You can't be upset with a trap. The trap's the trap that you're in, and I was in it since I was born, and I don't mind it. I love my mother.
She's
We're
like,
best friends
yeah.
with his mother. That's what I always say that.
She's
I always say
she's
best friends with his mother.
well, the bathroom. He's like, earmuffs.
Bathroom. No bathroom. No bathroom. No, I don't say that word. Oh, la, 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 and then he makes fun of a child that's walking by.
One of Van Sant's justifications too was that he said, well, in a play, I mean, they do different runs of a play with different actors, and it's a different experience. Like, yeah,
different
it's
thing.
not the same thing.
Not the
It's
same
a different
thing.
medium. You can't compare them. It's not.
because if Anthony Perkins plays it like childlike and almost like somewhat charming the way how folksy he is and how almost feminine he is, like Vince Vaughn just takes it and he's just like, oh yeah, I'm twitchy and creepy from the jump. It's like, where the hell is the surprise?
Right.
But anyway, whatever.
Yep.
Gus Van Sant, man. People poop in toilets all day long, but I can't poop on a beloved film. Come on. I made Good Will Hunting and not much else good. Can I just?
Well, he
come
tried
on.
to imitate Bellatar with Jerry, and it was just a failure. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you're not doing the same thing he's doing.
Can we
Like,
do another hour on how Gus Van Sant sucks?
He has really
Hey, I
good
love
films,
Mel.
though. He's hit or miss.
Hey,
Drugstore Cowboy.
Yep.
big fan of Finding
Forrester.
Forrester.
Finding
Yeah.
Forrester. He knows how to. knows how to make a good film. He just
just a
sometimes
good-
chooses not to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just didn't need to do that.
You swing
You
the bat.
can't make
sometimes
a-
you strike out.
You know, no Gus Van Sant, we don't get mildly racist Sean Connery.
You wrote this story.
And Joe Black. Whoa! Fun movie. Anyways,
Well, Tim, ever since you told me that Psycho is your favorite, I've been wanting to do this. So thank you
did
very
it. We
much
did
for
it.
saying- Thank you for the notes. And,
I love Ed
it was
Gein. You guys should look into Ed
conversation.
Gein, the guy that the actual murder.
Robert Bloch, I guess, said, denied that it was. He said that happened like a little bit after but I don't know. So I think the film tied into.
The film
definitely tied into
hardcore,
Gein, where
yeah.
maybe the novel didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. But look into Gein, man.
I will.
Or don't, if you're squeamish.
Whatever you're.
Or if you're not into stories of, grave robbing and peeling skin off of women to wear it as a suit and drum and howl at the moon in the nighttime. You haven't seen the deleted scenes from Psycho? Where he's dressed in his mother's skin playing a burlap sack drum while howling at the moon? That's in Bates Motel, the TV show. That's what.
If you want to see that,
We watch
if you want to see a person in a skin suit,
Person in a skin suit? I'm not a person in a skin suit. I actually Bates Motel, not as terrible. I watched like the first 2 seasons. Not as terrible as because I was like, why?
It's fun. It's
like it's not in the style of Hitchcock.
The writing's not great, and I think that's one of the biggest.
It's very dumb serial TV stuff. Like there's weird there's a Vietnamese drug trafficking ring underneath this hotel, and it's like what? Also, it's set in like modern times.
Yeah.
But it's a prequel to Psycho, which is in the 60s.
Interesting.
It's weird, but it's good. Freddie Highmore does a pretty good job in that, and Vera Farmiga's in it, and she plays the mom, and that's fun. And it doesn't have much to do with Psycho until like the every season finale when he murders someone else. It's just like season finale. All right, who's Norman gonna murder?
Olivia
Cook.
Olivia Cook.
Olivia Cook. Hot young actress.
Yeah, she's great in that. She was actually she almost like stole the show from me.
I'm being
I gotcha.
I'm being accidentally sexist a lot in this episode.
Because seeing her in Thoroughbreds after the fact, I was like, wow, she's a great actress. She really was like playing that character specifically for what it was, Yeah.
Thoroughbreds. Thoroughbreds is kind of Hitchcockian a little bit.
It is.
Anyways.
Very rope.
Yeah.
What did Paul Feig just do?
Simple Favor.
Yeah.
Yes, that was. I wouldn't really call it Hitchcockian, but he is employing a lot of things that you get from thrillers and that sort of necessarily that. I really enjoyed A Simple Favor. I would recommend that. Cool. Go see that. It's fun. It's real dumb once all the threads get pulled out. But it's fun.
It's fun
it is a
watching
lot
it
of fun.
unravel.
It's such a fun movie. I haven't had fun watching a movie like that in a while. Cool. Except for when I saw Psycho. And with that, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, Alfred Hitchcock. No matter what, it's fun. Like you just have all of his films and you pick one and you're going to enjoy it. But Psycho is right up on the list, and it's Tim's favorite one.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yes,
so thank
me
you
too.
all very much.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me, gentlemen. Should we hold hands?
I'm David Metzger.
Oh wait, it should have been his turn.
It'll go in a
Tim
circle.
Ridge.
And I'm Devon Ewalt.
Now Satan, come to
Happy October.
Hail Gein.